Hi, hello. Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Onion Skins. I'm your host, Peter Foltz. I just realized the other day, because we just released Ryan's episode, that I haven't introduced myself once. I have only introduced myself once at the first episode, and then never again, which is probably not good. But today is a super special episode because what am my eyes, do they deceive me? We have two guests. Oh my goodness, we have Kris Stanton, Cartoon Network story artist, dog and cat lover, and voted most chill person by our producer Will. And we have Jessica Shu, also a CN storyboard artist and soup enthusiast. Thank you both for agreeing to come on to the podcast today.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, no problem.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, you guys just loosen up. We're just buds talking. I came in strong with the soup enthusiast claim. Kris, you weren't there for that, but me and Jess really got into it a couple weeks ago about whether soup is actually like a good meal or not. I hate soup as like a meal. I just think it's the worst. Jess just loves it.
I cannot. I cannot stay on the same ground.
I think it's very good. I have to side with Jess on that.
It's just salty water. It's just salty ham water. Anyways, it was a big source of contention
for us.
You
haven't had good soup.
I mean, I guess I've had so much soup in my life. I don't want to get hung up on this whole soup thing, but I think it's pretty integral to what I'm all about. So I felt like it was important to establish who the soup people are, I guess. So let's just kind of get into this. I know both of you from school. We all go to school together, or used to go to school together. In Kris's case, maybe I think I just kind of want to take a moment for you guys to just introduce yourselves individually, say what you're all about, and how you kind of got to be sitting here on this podcast with yours truly. Kris, I think I'm super interested in hearing about your background. What is your deal?
Like how I got into animation?
Yeah, like how did you come to be at CalArts and ultimately end up working at Cartoon Network? I think that's super cool.
Yeah. So I think that initially I wanted to work in video games. I wanted to be like a concept artist for video games, and then like somewhere around the beginning of high school that changed, and then I realized that what I wanted to do would fit into animation a lot better, and I started becoming more interested in animation, and from there I applied to CalArts and came to CalArts and explored a bunch of different I initially wanted to be like a VizDev artist, and I still have a lot of interest in VizDev. And then over time, I discovered I really like story, and started delving into story more.
That's super cool. I think it's like I had to go back and look at your portfolio, and I was super blown away because you are so good at both. Like you could slide pretty easily into one or the other. And I think that's really cool. Especially, it makes me mad sometimes because I'm always just like, gosh, why can't people just be good at one thing? I'm struggling to catch up. But yeah, I think that's really great, and I think your work is super super awesome. Before we kind of move on to, I guess, your professional life, I kind of wanted to catch up with Jess, who also worked at Cartoon Network for a stint. Jess, you wanna give us the sort of background on who you are, what you're all about?
Yeah, I always liked to draw, I suppose, and that's what led me to pursue a career in the arts. I mean, like a lot of other people, I didn't think I'd be doing art, but I think around junior year, when I had to figure out what college to go to, I started looking into animation, and that's how I got here.
I know that we talked a little bit about this before the podcast started, but we're not allowed to delve into specifics about what you guys are working on. But I can imagine that they're pretty awesome things because I like all the things that Cartoon Network does for the most part. I wanted to kind of talk, I guess, more specifically about your entrance to the professional world, because I think that's something that people like myself and other people that feel like they're on the cusp of it, or maybe just don't even know where to begin, sort of struggle to wrap their minds around. I think that's like a very sort of intimidating thing to kind of think about. So with that, I think I kind of wanted to know what was your sort of into the respective shows that you're working on, and what you think may be the most helpful thing that maybe helped you landed those gigs, or what was the most helpful thing that helped you land those gigs?
I guess my answer for both of those would probably be my second year story class. My in was I was basically recommended for a test by my teacher that taught that class, and through that test I was then able to get what the current job that I'm currently working in. And I think that the most helpful thing for me definitely was that class, because I feel like over the course of that class, I just learned so many things in regards to storyboarding and the way it was structured. You get a script, and then like 1 week is like you thumbnail it and plan it out, and then the next like week or two, it's like rough, and then the very end of that process is just you get like a few weeks to then clean it up. And so, yeah, Abe's class was pretty much exactly what it's like as like a storyboarder working. It's just like that process of you get a script, break it down into thumbs, rough it out, and then clean it up is almost exactly how it pretty much is working. Mm-hmm. So I was able to go into my current job with like a pretty clear understanding of like what I had to do.
I remember running into you at the Halloween party, maybe it was, or like some sort of event that we were having at school, and I remember you saying this is exactly like Abe's class. And I only had Abe for like a little bit. Abe is our story teacher, but I completely get what you're talking about. Like his class really, I mean, I just finished it up, and I feel like I'm a completely different person for it after having sort of really been put through, I guess what you're saying is very similar to what the actual pipeline for working in story is. So that's really cool.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, Abe is really nice. His class really helped a lot.
Yeah, was your experience sort of the same, Jess? I mean, what was sort of like the real turning point for you in your sort of work that you were able to sort of land the gig that you were in?
I think definitely Abe's class is a part of it. I feel like before that I was very lost as to, what storyboarding is. Or, I had an idea of what it was, but it's Abe really kind of hammers out the details and teaches you the specifics of really what storyboarding should be about. But yeah, I guess my entry into getting my job at Cartoon Network was, I mean, supposedly my producer told me that they had found a comic of mine online, and then saw my 48-hour film about this bee that's on Vimeo, and then they were really looking for someone whose sense of humor fit the show, is what they told me. And then through there, they contacted me through email and asked me to do a test.
Wow. Okay, so they reached out to you directly just because of the work that you were putting out there on social media and on Vimeo.
Yeah, I think, a big part of it is luck. I would say that they stumbled upon my stuff.
I think that's like a common thing that a lot of people say, is that like a lot of it is luck. Like, I mean, obviously it's a lot of hard work that you and love that you put into making the things that you want to make, but ultimately it's like kind of a gamble as to whether somebody actually sees that stuff and if it really resonates with them. But you make some pretty cool stuff, and I think that kind of leads nicely into, I guess, my next question. And like I said, we can't really, you pointed out that we can't really get into specifics, but we kind of wanted to know, or I kind of wanted to know, about developing sort of your own personal sensibilities and like how that helps you or sort of is a disadvantage to the kind of show that you get picked for, or if you get picked for a show at all. I mean, just like, I think like your work has like a lot of has a horror bent to it a lot. And I don't think that the show that you're working on is horror in that way, or in any way. But I guess sort of how do you reconcile that, or is this something that has sort of been enlightening to you both, as far as like what kind of stuff that you can make that helps you land a job, or does it even matter?
I mean, you should make work that you want to do more of in the future, I suppose. That's what everyone tells us. And I think I do agree with that, because it wouldn't make sense to sell yourself as something that you don't enjoy doing.
I think that that's a pretty good way to look at it. Like, the work you make and put out will usually reflect like what you're best at and what you want to do, and in return, sorry, I can't find words right now.
No, it's all right. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, what you make and put out usually reflects what you are most passionate in, and in turn, I know there's a lot of people that are reached out to based on their work and the vibe it gives off, and the fact that it fits in with whatever production that reached out to them is looking for.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, I think I struggle with that a lot when, you know, I'm putting together my portfolio. It's all mostly Abe's assignments in there and a couple of my writing samples, but I found that like it's very hard for me to like feel like the stuff that I'm making on my own accord is something that any kind of company would ever want, or anybody would ever really want. So I kind of steer myself in that direction, and I think it ultimately kind of hurt me a little bit. But yeah, I think it's like cool because you both have such unique and very specific sort of flavors of storytelling. Like Kris, your film that you made last year was just so phenomenal. It didn't get into the producer show, but I really wished it had. I think it should have, for sure. It was a really beautiful story about a dog who passes away and floats around the city. Oh, I cried at the end. Hopefully you guys will. Hopefully it'll be in the show notes so that everybody can see this beautiful film.
It's not done. I have it like behind a password on Vimeo for like over a year.
Oh my God.
That's fine.
I've been meaning to finish it though.
Man.
I'll probably finish it soon. I have time now, so.
Man, it was really great. And Jess hitting us with the second horror film in a row. Jess is always making horror films, and they're really great. And which is so weird because you are like the least spooky person.
Yeah.
I know. We play a lot of Jackbox games together, and you always give like the most happy-go-lucky answers, and yet your films and the stories you tell are very spooky and scary, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I like both, I suppose, and I wish I don't know, I personally want to find a better way to connect the two. And I think the bridge is there. I just have to figure out how to build it better.
Yeah, I think that's the real struggle of every storyteller. I think that like looking back at like I'm right now I'm in the midst of like trying to just figure out what it is that I even like in a story, or what kind of story I really want to tell. And I wrote down a list of like all the interests that I have. And it feels like the sort of genres that they lean into are very opposite, but I really want to find a way to connect them both. Like I just wrote down a list of like just things like musicals and puppets and bones. I like bones, but I don't know how any of that sort of works in with antiquing or camping or folk music or whatever. But yeah, all that to say, I think I think there's a way, but I mean, the path to get there is always really tricky. I think I kind of wanted to, I mean, you guys have both at this point had experiences in working in a professional setting. And what I just kind of wanted to explore some of maybe the realities about the working world that's been revealed to you that maybe you didn't know about as a student, or maybe are there things that you wish you would have known before working on a real production? Start with you, Jess.
I think one thing I wish I had known better was how to pitch. Maybe that was just a fault of us running out of time in our second semester last year, because Abe did say he wanted to teach us pitching, but we never really got around to it. And that's something I had to learn on the job, and I kind of struggle with, I feel like, because I'm kind of soft-spoken.
Yeah, pitching is a really difficult one. I remember the first week of Abe's class, he had us like pitch, and he had one person in a group of people pitch for like assignment, our first assignment ever, and I did such an awful job at it, and he really kind of went in on me for how I was pitching. He's like, "You're standing on the wrong side, and you're doing this wrong. You need to project, and you need to be clear with what you're pointing at." It's a real skill in and of itself that definitely is not taught a lot of times. We also didn't get a chance to really pitch again this year just because of the circumstances, but yeah, I totally see that. Kris, is there anything that sort of the working world's revealed to you that maybe you didn't know about as a student?
I have the similar thing with pitching that Jess mentioned, though particularly like pitching in Storyboard Pro, like tabbing through. I feel like I always like overshoot, or like I go too fast or too slow, and it's definitely a skill that it's hard to master. But I think one other thing is probably it's surprising how much like school it feels in a way. Like I feel like a lot of students are really scared of getting an industry job. Like I know I was, and but it turns out it's not that scary. Everyone's really nice, and so far from what I've experienced, like CalArts classes and like story class in particular has really prepared me for the working world. And you're going to constantly be learning on the job what you know, and your like the quality of your work and like how you approach your work the first day on your job is going to be entirely different a year from then, and like 5 years down the road. You're just going to constantly be learning. It's like an extension of school. And in my experience, it's less stressful.
Yeah.
It's more streamlined and like a lot more, because your focus isn't separated between like 5 different things and subjects. You just have your one thing. It's good.
I that is such a like relief to hear. I'm sure it's a relief to hear for a lot of people who are maybe really scared. I think like that you don't hear very often in the filmmaking world that school has prepared me for the working world. In fact, when I was in film school, they would constantly pound into our heads that this is not going to prepare you for the working world, and I would always be like, why am I here? Like, why am I even trying? Like, why am I here? But I think that what CalArts does really nicely, at least in the story department, is like that they seem to be able to give us that sort of education that prepares us for the working world. I don't mean to like try and brag too much on CalArts, but I do think that is kind of a nice thing to hear. So now sort of, I guess, flipping the tables on that, now that you guys have both sort of had working experience, and this, I guess, feeds really well into it, but what is your, I guess, thoughts on school as a whole, or like the idea of going to an art school? There's a lot of people who would contend that you don't need to actually go to art school, and there are a lot of successful people in animation who don't go to school. I mean, I guess it's sort of hard to say from your point of view because you already have gone to school, but have your sort of views on your education changed having worked in a professional setting?
But both of us are gonna. Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
We're both gonna be on gap years, I think, next year, right?
What was that?
We're both gonna be on gap years next year, right? Well, you're taking gap year right now, so I guess.
Oh, I'm trying to get an extension.
Oh.
two
that,
years off.
well, I guess both of us will be in gap years next year. I personally still really like school. I think working is nice because there is that structure, as Kris mentioned, and you do just focus on what you need to do. And in school, you're a lot more divided. But in school, you also have a lot more freedom to just kind of do what you want. And the stuff that you make doesn't have as much of a consequence as if, you made a really bad mistake in the working world, I suppose. Like you're free to be more experimental with what you make, and all your failures are on yourself, which is kind of a nice, freeing environment.
Yeah. Do you think that like that's something that you can sort of get though on your own now? I mean, like, I think the value in school for me at least is like is in those that you get to work around, but it's sort of in some way like what Kris was saying earlier is that it is sort of like there is a school feeling to working in the working world. Like you get to learn and constantly grow from those experiences. So in that, do you think that school is in any way still worth your time?
I think it's really subjective. I think school is really helpful because, like Jess says, it lets you like experiment and find your voice non-consequentially in a very structured environment where you're with a bunch of peers. But I think especially like nowadays, there's more and more like classes you can just sign up to online and different methods in which you can learn these skill sets that aren't art school. And I think it's definitely it's up to the person. I don't think school is necessary. Like I think that it's helpful if you want to take it, and it's definitely like a tool that is extremely helpful and helps people get jobs, but it's not the end all.
Yeah, I think I would agree. There's a lot of people in the industry who, like have done other careers before coming into animation, or even people who don't go to like big name art schools or whatever. I mean, you're in art, your work and your portfolio matters the most.
Right. Definitely. I think I resonate with the fact that, I mean, school at least has helped me sort of find my voice. Like having to constantly churn out things. I don't know. Maybe I think, yeah, it's totally on a person by person basis. Like if you are one of those people that doesn't have sort of the self-discipline to make yourself do something every day and expose yourself to other ideas or people that are different or better than you, then school is probably a good thing for you if that doesn't come naturally for you like it does for me. I mean, even if it does, I mean, it definitely helps you fast track a lot of the sort of experimentation part of your artistic growth. As this sort of funnels into this next question, but does having, I guess, art as an actual job change your relationship to it? I mean, I know you guys have sort of just started or are just touching on the first part of your career, but I mean, just in this first experiences, I mean, has that sort of changed your relationship with making art?
Definitely, yes. Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. Oh no, it's no problem. I was just wondering if, like, since you guys both have jobs in the arts, I mean, a lot of people say that it changes their relationship to it, and as far as like what it looks like to make personal work outside of your actual career. And then there are some people where it just doesn't bother them at all, and they can separate that really well. But I think it's always enlightening to sort of hear how people sort of deal with it once they have to do it for 8 hours a day to pay rent and buy groceries and stuff. So I just was wondering if that had was an experience that you have had to deal with yet in any way.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, I've kind of struggled with burnout just from having to do art both as a way to, like you said, earn money, and also because art started out as a thing that I did for fun and almost to procrastinate on assignments in high school. And now that it's become my career, I do feel myself getting burned out by it if I do it too much, and that's still something I struggle with, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I have burnout issues a lot too. That's one thing that like in college you should like really value your time that you have to make a lot of personal art, because once you get it like are doing it 8 hours a day, like you can't then like after that 8 hours then draw for another 8 hours, because then like you'll get like carpal tunnel at some point or like some sort of wrist pains, and it's definitely a balance that you have to match. I find that I'm more excited to do personal art because I'm not like able to do it a lot. So when I do find time to do it, I'm really excited to do it. Or like I think of a lot of personal art as I'm working. I also find that I want to animate a lot more and like make more comics than I used to. So, and I think that's as a result of doing storyboarding like all day.
For a period of time, I was going to work and also going to school at the same time last semester. And it was also around the time when I was supposed to be thinking, like planning out my third year film. And I thought I could handle it. And I think I did at least get all my assignments done and do what I needed to do. But after that, I felt burned out. Yeah, I guess we keep saying burnout. I felt so tired. And I feel like I'm a person who needs to do a lot of different things to feel fulfilled. I can't just do only one type of art, and I think that's why I started to look to other hobbies to fulfill myself. And I think that is a road that some people take, but there are also people who just can draw like forever and ever and ever, and that's also awesome.
Yeah, that definitely transitions nicely into this next part where I kind of wanted to talk about your hobbies outside of drawing, because Kris, you do felting, and you've been posting some pretty cool skateboard bear drawings, and and Jess, you do a lot of pottery, which was always a really fun thing to see you bring out some ceramic stuff that you were working on. First I wanted to know what kind of drew you to those artistic disciplines that are so very different from storyboarding. Like what's so engaging about felting for you? Is it just that it's different, or is it something that is I don't know, that you have some other connection with for another reason?
I definitely like it because it's not looking at a screen.
Yeah.
Definitely, it like flexes a different like creative muscle. Taking a design, and I usually do like 2D designs of whatever I'm felting before I go into it. And it's always fun to kind of like figure out how to make those into a 3D space. It's also like a good stress reliever, I think. And it doesn't really require a lot of like wrist bending. A lot of it is just like you move at the elbow a lot. And so I think it's also kind of a chance to give my like wrist a relax. What's the right way to phrase that? Give my wrist a break from drawing, so I don't get like any like wrist pains or anything while still being able to make something.
I think I started doing pottery because I just wanted to do something with my hands outside of drawing. I've always liked working with my hands. I like to sew, and I was doing sculpture for a while. So I thought, oh yeah, pottery seems like a nice hobby to have, and we have a pottery studio at school. There's something very calming about sitting like in front of the wheel. Probably something symbolic about a circle and a wheel as well, where you just it's very calming, very therapeutic. And also, I like that there's no stakes in it. Like, pottery is an art form where you make the pot and then you fire it, and any mistakes that happen along the way just happen. You just gotta keep going. You gotta keep making more pots. So I don't feel the pressure of, like, I have to make this pot perfect. I can just keep making more pots and keep going. And it's nice.
Is there anything, like, about those specific hobbies that you have that feel like they engage you on a different level, or aid you in the sort of work that you make professionally?
I don't feel like my felt work really combines with storyboarding a lot. I guess I do think about like probably like narratives of what I'm felting. I've been thinking about trying to make like stop motion figures with it. So I guess down the line, maybe I'll end up like boarding out a scene to stop motion with felted figures or something, but I can't think of an overlap for me at least.
Just, is there something about pottery that really helps you in your storyboarding?
Uh, really, I don't think there's a connect at all. Like, I kind of, I kind of like that it's separate though. It's like I mean, that's why I like it. I think I like it because it's low stakes. It's like this has nothing to do with any of my career or anything else. I just have fun while I do it. But yeah, Kris, I would love to see. I would love to see a felted short film by you. That would be awesome.
In time, maybe. I figured out how to put wires through them to make them all pose out. I just need to figure out how to like weigh them down so they don't fall over because they weigh like barely anything. You shake the table a little bit and they'll fall over. So
I think the reason I was asking this kind of dumb question was I think like it's so interesting because we were talking about Abe, our story teacher. He came back recently from or a few months ago, not that recently, but he came back from a trip that he had taken in New York, where he spent time talking to students about storyboarding and directing. And he was telling us about, the time that he spent just looking at the cathedrals and admiring another art form that wasn't related at all to boarding, but he felt like reinvigorated his sense of new and cool things that he could incorporate, I guess, in the kinds of stories that they were telling on the show that he's on. And I always think that's a really cool thing. That's what I keep telling myself, at least for like these past couple months, because I haven't like been drawing very much at all, but I'm like trying to find other things to really pour myself into that maybe will in some indirect way reinvigorate the kind of love that I felt for doing boarding during the school year. Definitely something to think about if you're needing something else to do that's not drawing. Definitely pick up felting or pottery. Maybe not pottery. I don't know. That one's kind of messy. I always hated ceramic. I'm nothing against ceramics, but I just had a bad ceramics teacher a while ago.
Have opposite opinions on certain things like ceramics and soup.
Yeah, ceramics and soup. Man, don't you dare bring me a bowl of soup in one of your handcrafted pots. I will upturn that. I guess I kind of wanted to circle back to, because we didn't really get to talk about what your sort of day-to-day looks like working in the professional realm. And I kind of wanted to touch on that before we got too far, because it's something that sort of also feels kind of elusive. There's a lot of different sort of sources out there that will tell you different things online, at least, about what a sort of normal job for a storyboard artist is. So, I mean, what is sort of the week look like for either of you when you're working?
my everyday is pretty much the same. For the most part, I just arrive to work and then I just board all day in my office. It varies from production to production, but there'll be like check-ins and pitches that you'll have. Usually I think it's about every week. Sometimes it can be a different amount of time. I've heard a lot of different stuff from people, but for me, I just go in and I board, and then I have my check-ins throughout the month and pitches that I have to do. It's pretty consistent. I also will separate my board down into like if I have 5 days to do let's say like a rough pass, in my timeline view on Storyboard Pro, I'll like separate my my board into like fifths to then every day I have like 1/5 of those that's my like self-imposed deadline for the day, that I have to complete all of that by the end of the day. And then that helps me like hit my deadlines.
I guess sort of circle back and talk about, is there anything that you feel like younger board artists who are really looking for their way into the industry, or maybe they don't have the greatest connections like we have maybe at Cal Arts, like teachers that'll plug them in, or just sort of the resources in the same way is there any sort of advice or things that would be helpful for those people that you think that you've learned on the job?
I think that there's a lot of resources out there that are definitely really helpful. I see a lot of storyboarders on like Twitter that post about their processes, and they'll post their boards, and I think that those are really good things to look into to kind of learn from. I think social media is definitely really prominent. Definitely put yourself out there, reach out to people, and also learn to be really flexible and really receptive to feedback. That's really important in boarding. And definitely just keep at it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm still also a young storyboard
Yeah.
artist.
Same here.
So I don't. Yeah, but I think just make work that you enjoy and find your own voice when it comes to art and amuse yourself first and foremost. And I think you will probably do a good job of amusing others.
Yeah, humor is definitely one of those underrated things that, like, I think, like, everybody believes that there's sort of a standard for it. But I think what is most appreciated is, like, when you know keenly what makes you laugh and you know how to craft that, which I think you both are really good at. Jess, I think you have a very specific brand of humor that reads really well. I mean, we were working on a project together in our free time, I guess, and I got to see firsthand a lot of that brand of humor, which I think is great. All right, yeah, I wanted to ask the question about specialization because I think it's something that a lot of people who are making portfolios are kind of conflicted with. People who really like viz dev and also are maybe interested in story, or maybe vice versa. I know a lot of people kind of made two portfolios, and some people I've talked to say that it really hurts you, and other people say that it's actually really helpful because it shows that you have a grasp of things in total, or things as a whole in the pipeline. I guess this question is definitely for Kris. I mean, I would love to hear your thoughts on it too, Jess. But just being that you came from, like, I guess a viz dev sort of place initially, and then found that you really had a liking for story, and now you end up working in story. Do you have any sort of insight as to what somebody who's building a portfolio should look to do as far as specialization goes? Does it really even matter?
I'm not sure if it does all that much. I've found that viz dev has helped me, like, being someone that, like, initially wanted to do viz dev has helped me, like, immensely, I think, with tackling some of my boards, because I mean, in viz dev there's so many things that are, like, really prominent, like, you know, you got to know your perspective, or you have to know design and how that fits into story. And a lot of the times while you're doing storyboarding, you'll find that you have to make a background, or you have to, like, rough out basically, like, an environment, or maybe put a design to a character that doesn't have a design yet. And ultimately, like, I can't think that having two portfolios would hurt you. I mean, I'm currently working based on, like, I think just my test and, like, my story work that I had on my website. And I don't think that at any point my viz dev work negatively, like, impacted that. So I think that definitely, if you like both, embrace both, because it's, no matter, like, whether you go into viz dev or story, you'll find that one or the other will help you. You learn skills in both that are important to the other.
Definitely. Jess, is there something that you've found in that regard, as far as what helps a portfolio and maybe what doesn't help a portfolio when it comes to story?
I don't know. I've really only done. I've done more story portfolios than, I guess, viz dev portfolios, because I did a viz dev portfolio my first year. I mean, I guess I'll say this. The good thing about going to CalArts, and the thing that I appreciate the most, is that we get to do a little bit of everything. And I really enjoy doing a little bit of everything, because then it forms you into the one thing you do want to specialize in. I mean, I guess reiterating what Kris said, basically.
Yeah. I think, like, it gets really confusing because we have like portfolio sort of workshops that we end up going to during or around the time of portfolio day at CalArts, and it leaves a lot of us sort of confused. Or it left me definitely confused because, you know, especially during portfolio day, I would go up to some place like DreamWorks or, you know, Disney TV or whatever. These are just examples, but, like, I would get very sort of different feedback on the things that they liked about my portfolio and the things that they didn't. And oftentimes they felt like they were at odds. Like the places that I went that were more feature focused really did not like the fact that I put VizDev aspects as far as like the development part of any of the boards that I was doing. They thought it was a waste of space, and they thought I should just put in boards. And then there were other places that really liked the fact that I put that in there because it showed that I had an understanding of other things. And I guess I know that the answer to these questions is always sort of rather unsatisfying, in that it always just ends up being, well, it depends, on who you're talking to. And it's definitely sort of been a hard thing to kind of navigate. But yeah, thank you for your insight on that. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have actually listened to any other episodes. We end every episode by asking if there's anything that you guys want to plug. Not like for yourselves, but like what you think people should be watching or listening to or consuming. We've gotten a lot of Animal Crossing. That's obvious. I'm like one of like 5 people in the world who's not playing Animal Crossing. But is there anything that you guys feel like everybody else should be on? Like, is there anything that you watched that really is something that has been inspiring you for this week?
I haven't really like consumed any media like for a little while, but I was really excited. In the last episode, Ryan plugged Kentucky Route Zero, and that's been a game that I've played since freshman year of high school, I think, or maybe 8th grade, because it's been released in like episodes over time, and they just recently finished the very last episode. And I have yet to play it, but I'm planning on, after this, getting it on Switch, because they recently, I think they developed it for Switch, and playing it through, because I like to replay the entire game before playing the new episodes, and playing it through on Switch this time, and finally finishing it. It's really beautiful. It has some of the best visuals a game I've seen in a game, like artistically. It pulls a lot of inspiration from things that I feel make it very unique. Like, I think radio plays, it pulls inspiration from theater, and there's a lot like installation art, and just it's really it's a good game. Definitely check it out if you like magic surrealism and very interesting and well done storytelling. So yeah,
I kind of want to check that out. I feel like I've been trying to just take in a lot more stuff recently to try to reinvigorate my creativity. I know you were talking about that earlier, Peter. Midnight Gospel really inspired me. I still haven't finished it, but the visuals are just so stunning, and it makes me, I don't know, almost hopeful in a way. I'm like, oh my god, stuff can look like this and be produced and look awesome. Yeah.
We talked about this, but the idea of having to like what those boards must look like for that show must be crazy. I mean, like there's just so much visually happening, and it like almost never matches up with like what is happening, what you're listening to. So I imagine it must be really hard to keep track of and figure out what happens next. I wonder how those pitches go. I mean, yeah, those are really great recommendations. I'm recommending that people try overalls this week because I've been wearing mine, and I bought a new pair. They're coming next week, but I think that like they're really great for working in. They're really great for just being in, and they make me feel really nice about myself. So that's my plug for this week. You guys, thank you so much for being on. For agreeing to come on to this show and inject some of your wisdom about the working world into our lives. I think are you the first like working people that we've had on the show? I think so, actually. So thank you very much for being a part of this thing with us. Yeah, thank you, Kris. Thank you, Jess.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we hope to see you again next week. We got some more really great guests and some really great things going on. So please tell people about us, I guess. And if nothing else, just listen again. Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.